So if you're someone who deals with allergies, you've probably heard the whole story about histamine and inflammation, right? But what if the real story, the one that kicks everything off, starts way, way earlier? We're talking about a tiny cellular switch that has to decide whether to sound the alarm or just stay calm. Okay, let's dive into this. It's some seriously fascinating science.
You know the feeling all too well. The sneezing, the itching, the wheezing, ugh. But what's the microscopic chain of command that actually leads to all that misery? Well, today, we're going deep inside the cell to find the master conductor of the entire allergic orchestra.
All right, first things first. Let's do a quick run-through of the classic explanation. This is the one we all kind of learned in biology class. It's a pretty straightforward chain reaction, but a really powerful one. Okay, so it all begins when an allergen, like a tiny speck of pollen, gets into your system. It finds and latches on to these specific IgE antibodies that are just sitting on the surface of your mast cells. That connection immediately flips a switch on the mast cell, causing it to basically freak out and dump its entire cargo of inflammatory chemicals, the most famous one, of course, being histamine. And that chemical flood, that's what causes all the trouble. All the extra mucus, the swelling, that awful tightening in your airways. Yeah, all those classic symptoms we know and definitely don't love. It's a direct, immediate, inflammatory hit. But this is where the plot thickens. Because if it was really all just about that first wave of inflammation, we would have solved asthma by now. And we absolutely haven't. Turns out, that classic model, as good as it is, just doesn't explain some of the most stubborn and, frankly, damaging parts of the disease. It leaves some huge questions unanswered. So here's the crucial point. The classic inflammation story is great for explaining the immediate symptoms, but it really struggles with the chronic stuff. Things like bronchial hyperresponsiveness, which is just a sciencey way of saying your airways are constantly twitchy and overreactive, and something called airway remodeling, which is the long-term physical damage and scarring in the lungs. And get this, studies have shown these things can happen even without a major inflammatory flare-up. So yeah, something else has to be going on. And that something else brings us to the real star of today's explainer. We're talking about a cell that's less like a foot soldier and more like a four-star general, orchestrating the entire battle from the very beginning. Think about it. If the mast cell is the one launching all the chemical weapons, who's the one that gives the order to even prepare for war in the first place? Say hello to the dendritic cell. This is one of the most powerful antigen-presenting cells in your entire body. The best way to think of it is as an immune system sentinel. It's on patrol 24/7, constantly sampling its environment. And when it finds something foreign, like an allergen, it has to make a critical decision. Is this a real threat, or can we ignore it? And this picture shows its job perfectly. Just follow along. On the left, you've got an immature dendritic cell that runs into an allergen. It basically eats it, processes it, and matures. Then it travels to a lymph node, finds a rookie T cell, and shows it a piece of the allergen. It's essentially saying, hey, see this? This is the enemy. I need you to become a very specific kind of soldier, a Th2 type fighter. And that Th2 cell is what goes on to orchestrate the entire allergic mess we feel. The dendritic cell literally starts it all. So the billion-dollar question is, how does the dendritic cell decide to sound the alarm? And the answer, incredibly, comes down to how it eats. It's all about a massive change in its cellular metabolism. Okay, let's break this down because it's super cool. A resting dendritic cell is just in surveillance mode, right? It fuels itself very efficiently using these slow burn processes that promote tolerance. It's calm. But when it gets activated by an allergen, it goes through this dramatic shift. It flips a switch and starts using a fast burn fuel called glycolysis. It's way less efficient, but it's fast, and it gives the cell all the building blocks it needs to ramp up for a full-blown immune attack. And we're not talking about a tiny adjustment here. As the research says, this is a significant shift. It's actually so profound that scientists have compared it to something called the Warburg effect, which is a similar metabolic switch that you see in fast-growing cancer cells. The cell is literally reprogramming its entire energy grid to prioritize rapid production over long-term efficiency. Now, this diagram here really brings it all to life. Look at the cell on the far left in panel A. That's our resting DC. It's in a catabolic state. That's breakdown mode. It's just breaking things down for that slow and steady energy. But then, after it gets activated, look what happens in B and C. It switches to an anabolic state. That's build-up mode. The fast-burning glycolysis just takes over, giving it all the raw power it needs to build weapons, move around, and activate the rest of the immune system. So, and this is the most important part, this metabolic change isn't just a side effect of the cell getting activated. It's the reason the cell can get activated. This switch to glycolysis is the engine that powers its transformation from a peaceful sentinel into a wartime general. So what does all this mean for the future? Well, this discovery gives us a completely new way of thinking about how to treat allergies. If we understand the engine, maybe we don't have to spend all our time just cleaning up the mess it makes. And that is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? If we can actually target this metabolic reprogramming, could we convince that dendritic cell to just stand down before it ever gives the order to attack? This chart just lays out the whole paradigm shift perfectly. Traditional therapies, like antihistamines, are all about blocking the effects of inflammation after it's already started. But this new immunometabolic approach, it targets the root cause, the cell's decision to fuel up for war. The goal isn't just to manage the battle, it's to prevent it from ever being declared in the first place. And what's really exciting is that scientists already have specific molecular targets in their sights. They're looking at ways to block proteins like MTR, which is kind of like the gas pedal for that pro-inflammatory state. And on the flip side, they're looking at how to activate sensors like AMPK, which acts as the brake, telling the cell to stay in its calm, energy-saving mode. It's all about gently persuading the cell's internal machinery to choose tolerance over inflammation. This, right here, is the huge takeaway. It completely changes our view of allergies. It's no longer a system-wide problem we just have to manage, but a cellular decision that we might actually be able to influence. We could go from constantly mopping up the floor to just fixing the leaky pipe at the source. And that leaves us with a truly mind-blowing question. I mean, it sounds a little like science fiction, doesn't it? But all the research is pointing this way. The future of treating allergies might not be a pill that blocks histamine, but a therapy that fundamentally retrains our immune sentinels, all by just changing the way they eat.